Mr. President, the world is more dangerous today than any time in my lifetime. We face 5 threats across 5 domains: China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and terrorism. And the domains have gotten very complicated: air, land, sea. Now we have to deal with cyber and space. But in that background, Mr. President, 3 times over the last 50 years, this government, under the leadership of 3 different presidents, has disinvested its military significantly. Under President Carter, under President Clinton, and indeed under President Obama. They cut the military by 25%, at least in each one of those administrations. The last one was extremely draconian. We saw the impact of that in our readiness, the fact that our modernization program had been killed, and we found ourselves falling behind what we now call near-peer competitors. I would say they're peer competitors now. When you look at the money that China is spending on their military, when adjusted for purchasing power parity, is exactly the same as we're spending. And they don't have the regulatory overhang. They don't have the legacy costs that we have here in the United States. And so they can get things done quicker and cheaper. In the meantime, the world continues to become very dangerous. And yet here we are in the 2nd month of our fiscal year under a continuing resolution. And as we now are becoming educated about, this is devastating to our U.S. military, and has been. This is the 187th time since the current 1974 Budget Act was put into place that we have executed a continuing resolution. It sounds real easy. Well, we can't get agreement on how much to spend for the next year, so we'll just keep spending at the same level. Some businesses do that, but in this case, with the U.S. military, it's devastating because it locks them in to existing programs. For example, we did an audit last year. It's the first audit in the history of the United States of the Department of Defense, the 3rd largest line item on our expense sheet. And we did an audit. Now that audit was found and identified by the Department of Defense $4 billion of obsolete programs that nobody really wanted to keep and continue spending on, $4 billion a year. So right now, under this continuing resolution, not only are we not able to give a 3.5% pay raise, the largest in 10 years, to our military, not only are we not able to improve their housing, but we are obliged to keep spending $4 billion a year right now on obsolete programs that the Defense Department doesn't even want. This is ludicrous, Mr. President. Right now, I would say that we're in gridlock. We had 88 votes here in this House, in this Senate, where we voted to approve the National Defense Authorization Act several weeks ago. Very bipartisan, negotiating in committee. I was on Armed Services Committee. We took this very seriously, and we debated, and it was a definite fight. But we reached compromise, Mr. President, and we reached agreement, bipartisan, to support and defend our military and to make sure that they are able to do the things that they want to do to make us competitive and defend our country. And yet here we are, 6 weeks in to this fiscal year, and we still don't have this year funded. We're under a continuing resolution that devastates the military. 6 decades, 58 years. Each year we've been able to do that. And yet this year we can't seem to come to an agreement because the House and the Senate can't get together in conference and agree on exactly what it is they want to do. That's all window dressing, Mr. President. This has nothing more to do. It's no more complicated than this. The Democrat brethren in this body and in the House simply do not want to allow this president to spend another dime on building a wall around our southern border. Let's put this in perspective. First of all, we've seen on this floor, just in the last 2 hours, 2 different comments. Says, well, we all know that building a border wall doesn't really work. It doesn't change anything. Well, that's just absolute propaganda, Mr. President. Barack Obama built 135 miles of wall. This body approved that. And wherever that wall was built, illegal crossings of the southern border went down 95%. That's not propaganda. That's fact. And, Mr. President, it's another example of the obstructionism we've been witnessing here since the day this president was sworn in. On the inauguration day, January 20th, 2017, the headline of the Washington Post said, "The campaign to impeach this president has already begun." Since day one, they've been obstructing this president. We saw that on the confirmation process here. For the first time in 230 years, we saw the minority party not waive the 30-hour debate rule and allow this president to get his nominees confirmed. It's been the slowest ever, Mr. President. And so we sit here today not being able to build the Space Force that both sides have agreed on. 88 people in this body agree that we need to go ahead and start spending money and doing that. We can't do that. We can't put in the first place the foundation blocks, the building blocks for the advanced battle management system, which is so important to deal with a modern fight. We can't rebuild our nuclear triad, which is absolute critical shape. We can't seem to get at our readiness right now because of the lock that we have under this continuing resolution to the existing contracts out there. And as you just mentioned a few minutes ago, we have to go in and renegotiate all these contracts. Last year was the first time that we did not have a continuing resolution, and it was such a sigh of relief inside our military because it was the first time in a long time, over a decade, that they didn't have that for the first quarter of the year. This is devastating. It's become habit. We've got to stop it. It is absolutely insidious. It's killing our military and keeping us from doing the things that both sides want to do because of petty politics, Mr. President. We need to modernize our force. We need to do it right now. This NDAA allows us to do that. We need to rationalize our expenditures to make sure that every dime we're spending in our military is exactly what we should be spending it on. We have a voluntary force, Mr. President, and we can never take that for granted. And we have to take care of our people in uniform, wherever they are in the world. That means working on their mental health, their physical health, and their housing. Mr. President, I come from a state that has 9 military installations. We take national defense very seriously in Georgia and always have. People are concerned that this gridlock is endangering our country. It's time that we get together, pass this NDAA, move on the appropriation bill, and get this done, Mr. President. People back home are watching, the people in our military are watching, and more importantly, our adversaries, our potential adversaries are watching. With that, I yield the floor.